I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, and this is a breaking news alert. A very disturbing ruling coming down from the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, which has granted the state of Nebraska and several other states led by Republican governors emergency motion for an administrative stay prohibiting the Biden administration from discharging any student loan debt under the student loan cancellation program, the debt forgiveness program, until the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals makes a final ruling on an injunction filed by the state of Nebraska and several of these other Republican-led states to try to permanently stop President Biden's student debt cancellation program. So, in short, what this means is that for a temporary period of time, there's a briefing schedule set. Biden's student debt cancellation program, which was set to go into effect October 23rd, is being temporarily blocked. Student debt cannot be discharged under this ruling until a final ruling is made by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. Even though this is styled as an emergency motion for administrative stay, which is granted by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, in essence, it's functioning as a national injunction, an injunction that is against literally the entire country, and Biden administering discharging the debt and administering this program, not just in the areas that are overseen by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, but throughout the country. Now, the briefing schedule set is that the response in opposition to the motion shall be filed on Monday, October 24th by the Biden administration, and then the state of Nebraska and other Republican-led states' reply, if any, will be due on or before 5 p.m. on Tuesday, October 25th. And so ostensibly, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals will make a ruling on these issues by next week. I do want to say this to anybody out there who is subject to the student debt cancellation program. Make sure you still apply. Make sure this should not stop you from applying. Ultimately, I believe the final outcome of this is going to be that Biden's student debt cancellation program is going to be permitted to be implemented, although there is a possibility, not a minuscule possibility, that the Court of Appeals is going to rule against the Biden administration. But regardless, make sure you get your documentation in. I want to tell you about this case. I want to tell you about the ruling so you better understand what's taking place here, and we can look a little bit just beyond the headline. So on September 29th, the state of Nebraska and several other states led by Republicans filed this lawsuit against the Biden administration, against the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, and the United States Department of Education to block and stop Biden from implementing the student debt cancellation program. Biden invoked the 2003 HEROES Act, which basically says the Secretary of the Department of Education can do things like cancel student loan debt in situations of war or other emergencies, is what the statute says. In light of COVID, that being a national emergency, Miguel Cardona, the Secretary of Education, invoked the HEROES Act as the authority for student debt cancellation, which is being challenged here by Nebraska and the several other states. The other states, in addition to Nebraska, include Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, and South Carolina. They filed their motion for an injunction to stop Biden's student debt cancellation plan in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri, Eastern Division. Their case was heard before a judge by the name of Edward Autry, Henry Edward Autry, who's a United States District Court judge appointed by George W. Bush, so someone who was appointed by a right-wing administration. And in ruling on the injunction that was brought by Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, and Iowa, Judge Autry ruled that these states did not have any standing to bring the lawsuits. And the essential argument being made by these states to assert standing, if you could believe it, is that their argument essentially is that their revenues coming into the state are going to be hurt. And they try to make various ways of arguing it. Some states like Missouri argued that one of the entities that contracts with the state would be losing money based on the way student loans would be consolidated from a certain type of federal loan to a direct loan. And then some of the other states argued that some of their other agencies would be harmed. And then some other states argued, or all of the states essentially argued, that their tax revenue, that they would be able to recover less tax revenue, even though at least through 2026, the discharge of the student loan debt by these states would not be taxable. So what these states were arguing essentially is that after 2026, they'd be losing out on revenue if they decided to tax the discharge of student loan debt. In other words, one of the things the states are threatening to do, like this is why we have to go beyond the headlines to see what the states are actually, these Republican-led states are actually arguing. They're saying they're hurt and that they have standing and that they're damaged because they would like to actually tax student loan debt being discharged, right? Which is interesting when you, well, I mean, it's not just interesting, it's disgusting that they're trying to make that argument, but at the same time, they're the ones who claim less taxes. No, they want to tax more the students having their debt discharged, and that's what they're alleging is their injury to assert standing. And the district court judge in the Eastern District of Missouri saw right through that and said, you don't have standing to sue. You don't have standing to bring this case. And so he denied their motion for an injunction in a very thorough 19-page ruling on October 20th. On October 21st, on Friday, the states, Nebraska and the other states I mentioned, filed a motion with the district court judge to stay or stop the Biden program, the student debt cancellation program, from being implemented until they could appeal to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the Court of Appeals that sits over the Eastern District of Missouri, where the case was filed. This motion was denied by Judge Henry Edward Autry on October 21st, 2022. These group of states then filed with the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals to have a temporary stay of the underlying order by the district court judge, which in effect would prohibit the Biden administration from discharging student debt until the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals makes its final ruling. And this was granted by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, many legal commentators, including myself, are looking at what was just ordered by the Eighth Circuit and saying, well, that's not really an administrative stay, what you just ordered. Essentially, what you just did, Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, you didn't stay the order from the district court judge when you think about it, right? Because remember, we know all of the law that we've been teaching here on the MeidasTouch Network. What did the district court judge do? The district court judge found that there was no standing, that these parties couldn't even bring the case because they were not proper parties. So how could the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals be staying a lack of standing through an emergency order that stops the Biden administration from implementing their student debt cancellation program, right? So really, it's styled as an administrative stay, but it really isn't. That's why this order is just so bad and horrific, because what it really is functioning as is an injunction to stop the student debt cancellation program from being implemented, from the Department of Education, from discharging the debt of your student loans or of people who have student loans until there is a final order by the Eighth Circuit. Now, the Eighth Circuit is comprised of a lot of Republican appointees. And the question is are they going to buy this standing argument by the states that because their tax revenue could be hurt in 2026, or because of the way there's consolidation of student loan debt into direct loans, and is that an injury that's being caused to certain state agencies which would be collecting that debt if it was administered a different way, which the district court judge just said, absolutely not. You're not making a valid claim of standing to even bring this case in the first place. But is the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals going to buy that? I mean, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals did not have to grant that administrative stay and give a national injunction stopping Biden from implementing the program. And so, in short, Biden, the Secretary of Education, is prevented at least until October 25th, when briefing will be finished, from implementing the student debt cancellation program, and it could potentially last longer. And if the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals rules in favor of Nebraska and these Republican states, it is possible that based on the ruling like that, the entire student debt cancellation program can be completely terminated, can be stopped. That student debt that was supposed to be removed will be blocked by these Republican-led states. And I think it's important. Look, I'm not trying to scare you. Do I think that's going to happen? As I said from the outset of this video, that's not what the law is supportive of. But I don't know who the panel is on the 11th Circuit. I don't know if they're going to make a horrible ruling. I think this was a horrible ruling that they made, which is not a great sign to begin with. I mean, we saw these lawsuits, and it's also important that you know who's bringing these lawsuits. Like, you can't just be discouraged and just say the whole system is screwed up and screw it. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to do anything. This whole system is messed up. That is what the extremists and the fascists want you to do. That is what their goal is here. They filed lawsuits across the country hoping for a result somewhere like this to try to break your spirits, because that's what fascists do. They don't represent the country. They represent small pockets of populations who want to break your spirits. And hopefully, if they break your spirits, they think that they could implement their agendas, which is to relieve debt of billionaires and give billionaires bailouts. And you have to realize this is why I'm a Democrat at the end of the day. Because I say, are Democrats perfect? No, far from it. Do I agree with everything that Democrats do? No. I disagree with a ton of the issues that Democrats do. I disagree a lot. That's the nature of politics. We should disagree. But do I believe, and am I clear that they are the ones fighting for issues of the 99.999% of Americans, whereas the MAGA Republicans and extremists come in and they try to get the billionaires extra yachts, extra private jets. They try to make sure that CEOs get outrageous tax cuts, outrageous benefits, while screwing over the workers and screwing over people who are just hardworking everyday Americans who are just trying to get by. And then when Democrats try to implement some plans, they go around filing lawsuits to try to just harm regular average Americans with BS arguments like this. But we can't get discouraged. We can't. This needs to be a motivating factor to vote. All students, all future students, anybody who this is affecting, anybody who this may affect. And again, they're doing this right now, but they're coming for you next. Unless you are a billionaire private jet owner, unless you've got mansions and drive Lamborghinis and whatever, unless you go places in limousines everywhere, if that's not you, the MAGA Republicans are coming for you. Therefore, trickle-down economics. Give all of the benefits to the richest Americans in the world. And hopefully they trickle it down on everybody else. Maybe they'll trickle some down on you. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe when they buy their jet and their yacht, you can get some of the little trickles back down to you. It's disgusting. It's despicable. Don't get discouraged, though. If this is impacting you, make sure you still apply to the student debt loan cancellation program. Make sure you apply, but make sure you spread the message. These are Republican-led states that are going after you, that are going after hardworking Americans. They didn't go after anybody when billionaires got tax cuts and it ran up our deficit by $7.5 trillion. Biden's decreased our deficit by close to $2 trillion. Yet they want to go after you, attacking hardworking Americans when the majority of people impacted by student debt cancellation make less than $75,000 a year is who this program primarily helps. People who make less than $75,000 a year. And that's who Republicans want to go after. How dare we try to help just hardworking Americans saddled by student loan debt? It's despicable. Anyway, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hopefully that gives you a better sense of what is going on here. Next step is we will wait for the ruling. We'll see what happens with the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals ruling. We'll keep you updated as soon as we know more. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Make sure you hit the subscribe button right now. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers. Now more than ever, we need your support. Hit the subscribe right now. It's free to subscribe. And also, if you want to help independent media like this, where there's no other analysis like this anywhere else, period. There's maybe a few places, but very rarely any place else. If you want to help grow this network, this community, we're not funded by any outside investors at all, zero. And our competition, the both sides media, they're funded by billions and billions of dollars. We're powered by you. So if you want to help, here's what I need you to do. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch. patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch now. There's a number of exclusive membership packages where you can get exclusive podcast content, exclusive merch drops, exclusive behind the scenes footage. You can become an honorary producer of the MeidasTouch podcast at some of the tiers. You get postcards from me and my brothers and so much more. But most importantly, it will help grow this network, and we need your help now more than ever. I always get asked by you, Ben, what can we do to help? Wherever you are in the world, we need your help right now. Please, at the end of this video, go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, and let's grow this network and community of truth together. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, It Wasn't Rigged, You're Just a Loser, at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.